Hello there friends, it's been a while. So last time I gave you one job. Choose our first boss. And you chose Karen. Which was stupid. But on the other hand, so am I. So let's get started. So we are making a boss battle, and the boss battle needs to have visuals, a few attack patterns, and of course, some different phases. I began with Karen's design in order to allow the visuals to inform the rest of the gameplay. And so, here is the very prestigious methodology that I've used. First, an artist must concentrate and visualize his concept. Now you've got it! I've got to embrace the Karen. Right. I've got to sniff the Karen. Well, okay. I've got to lick the Karen. I've got to wash the Karen. I've got to date the Karen. I've got to be the Karen. Luckily, I've had my fair share of Karen encounters under my belt, thanks to the time I've spent as one of the managers of an online shop which for legal reasons shall remain unnamed. And that's, my dear friends, how I know for a fact that when a Karen is facing rejection, she without fail and without skipping a beat would whip out a powerful demonic incantation that sounded a little something like this.
This is unacceptable. Just wait and I'm going to tell all my friends about this.
Which actually inspired me to create these little girls that will come to fight you in the stead of their overlord. But let's back up a little bit and design the battle that precedes this moment. So we need to give her a few behaviors and attacks. At first I thought of the entitled Beat Slap as her melee go-to, but it doesn't have as much gameplay potential as other options. So I settled on an entitled Ballerina Kick instead. With the attack concept on the ready, all I had to do was to create a behavior that would put that attack to good use. So in true Karen fashion, she will follow you no matter what, and when she's ready, she will gather all her strength and try to roundhouse kick you in the face. When she lands, she will dust herself off, rinse and repeat. But as you know, having just a single attack is boring. So it's time to release the claws. In this one, if you were to get too close to her, she would leap out of harm's way and plunge her nails into the ground, as Karens in the wild often do, causing them to resurface right below your footing in an attempt to, well, impale you. But even with that, I just couldn't help but feel like the boss is not Karen enough. What was the missing piece of my puzzle? Where have I gone wrong? I spent countless nights laying awake, retracing my steps trying to figure out the last ingredient to my Karen recipe. Things got out of control. And then it hit me. The catalyst all Karens had in common. Pure, unadulterated rage. And so I've devised a system that keeps account of how many times a Karen misses, and after a while, if she misses one too many times, she goes berserk, making her attack stronger and harder to predict. To wrap everything up, I wrote this nice script that alternates and manages the behaviors. So let's do a quick recap. Karen kicks, Karen nails, Karen reaches half health and goes bye-bye. Small Karen come, small Karen dead. Karen come back, but now phase 2. Karen always angry. Now you might be thinking, if I were to kill her in this second phase, things should be over, right? Well, no, not really. Let me explain. Karen was actually not the most voted option in the poll. There was a different kind of creature. Not as dark and sinister, but terrifying nonetheless. You might know it as the mighty serpent god of the seas, Leviathan. So long story short, Karen's true form is in fact a serpent god. Initially, my plan was to simply upgrade Karen's attacks even further and have you fight her again, but that felt a bit flat in the scaling side of things.
Quick note here. Scaling is the process of making a game progressively more challenging to keep the player engaged. Now, there are two main schools of thought when approaching scaling in games. There's difference in scale, where you keep making the enemies stronger and meaner, and there's difference in kind, where you introduce interesting new elements that challenge the player in different ways. So which one will it be, Red?
Yes. So I've decided to do a bit of both. Essentially, Karen's true form is so strong and so mean that you can no longer fight her, and so you're introduced to an interesting new combat mechanic. I call it running for dear life. And now that we mention running, I've had some, let's say, interesting situations arise while designing Leviathan's run. Like, if I wanted to create a worm Leviathan, this would be great, but since we had different plans for our little sneaky gal, I had to study up on some good old slithering Animal Planet action. A couple of attempts later, and a painstakingly long animating session of moving 1,000,000 tailbones one by one, and we were finally good to go. Or so I thought. You see, I wanted Karyathan to chase you and destroy any platforms in her wake, but that's easier said than done. Let me show you why. So you have two animations, one for moving and one for attacking. Cutting from one to the other is first of all ugly, but it also forces Karyathan into a stop, and we don't want that. Now you might be thinking, have an animation where Karyathan attacks while moving, but that doesn't work either because of this forced cut right here. Yuck. So essentially we needed to have the hands animate independently from the rest of the body. And in an attempt to do that, I've tried a few things that I honestly had no idea what they were meant for, and let's just say that the results were not exactly what I was hoping for. But then, one morning I had an epiphany. Let me ask you something. Have you ever seen a video of people putting fake hands on a chicken? And that's exactly what I did. I performed limb surgery to remove her original arms and then mount on her a rig of independent ones. Now the hands can act on their own, but they are still glued onto the body. And well, what do you know? It works! And finally, I've created the hazards for the obstacle course. And we were done. Anyway, that's it for today, thanks for watching and I will see you soon.